This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome to the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante. There he is. Welcome to the show. The New York Yankees are still in the postseason, and they actually lead their series, which you've been paying attention to New York sports media. I'm sure you've seen Grimace and OMG and Jose Iglesias and a very fun song. But the Yankees are here also, actually. And again, they have a 2-1 advantage in the ALDS if you counted them out after a Game 2 loss. Maybe some people on this podcast might have done that. Who knows? But hey, you were wrong. They did punch back in Game 3. The series is not over, but the options ahead of the New York Yankees: win the series tonight with Gerrit Cole on the mound. Worst case scenario, go home for Game 5. Then you got a chance to win it then. That's certainly better than I thought when we were tied 2-2 in the 7th inning, late in the game in KC. Royals rally in the 5th behind Patrick Mahomes. You feel like they're probably going to win it. You feel like it's probably going to be painful. You feel like it's probably going to get to extras. Something bad's going to happen to you. You're going to remember this night as the night that bad stuff occurred, which you never want. The worst feeling about sports is when you wake up and your day is like mostly fine, and you're like, but tonight's gonna like actually probably be like very bad. And you're like going through, you're just like eating your dinner, you know, you're enjoying a burrito, and you're like, in 3 hours, I'm gonna throw a rock at my television. But it hasn't happened yet. That's kind of where we were at in the middle of the game last night, like after the 5th inning rally, and they sneak out of it with the Pasquantino flyout, but you're still like, I don't know. Like, I'm glad it's tied, but that's just setting up more disappointment later. Yankees win. Giancarlo Stanton. Yankees get 4 hits in a road playoff game. 3 of them are Giancarlo Stanton. So we got to talk about him, obviously. Powered the win. We got to talk about how he spoke after the game. We got to talk about the bullpen, which has been nails in this series so far. And I guess we probably have to talk about Game 2 a little bit because it did happen. And if not for Game 2, the Yankees could be celebrating a sweep today. But instead, we're still playing. The series is not won. There's more work to be done because Carlos Rodon, the reliever, showed up. And that would have been awesome, except for he was supposed to start the game. So after 2 innings, oops. First inning was great. Wish the staff was a little bit deeper so we could experiment. But we can't. Anyway, the New York Yankees up 2-1 in the ALDS. Can't move on just yet, but pretty money Game 3, and I think a lot of us expected way worse. And here to join me, this is 2 o'clock, by the way. That's how you know it's the Yanks Go Yard podcast. 2 o'clock Eastern, every Monday, every Thursday, except not next Monday. It's a holiday. We'll see you on Tuesday and on Thursday. Thomas Carannante, welcome to the show. New York Yankees won a baseball game that I have been conditioned to watch them lose since Aaron Judge showed up, and Aaron Judge didn't make that much of a difference in the outcome. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah, let's get the concerns out of the way real quick because I'm moving on from Game 2, or at least I'm trying to. But guess what? Same situations kind of existing.
Well, it's funny. How long ago does Game 2 feel now? And to win a series, you got to win 3. You're allowed to lose 2. Nobody's won this series yet. But if you win the series tonight, if you win the series in Game 5, Game 2 will just be a little footnote. And then the next time Carlos Rodon starts, you'll be like, hey, maybe, he should be monitoring his workload a little bit, the effort level in the early innings. But the Yankees have an opportunity to turn Game 2 into a footnote. So we're going to talk about it now, but not that much.
No. I think, look, rest of the lineup goes 1 for 25. Giancarlo Stanton goes 3 for 5. That's bad and not good. I mean, it can't happen. Team with runners in scoring position for the series, 3 for 25. Not winning baseball. Defense, still a little shoddy. You have the Juan Soto dive last night. You have Anthony Volpe trying to get to that infield grounder and then wildly terrible throw that extends the inning and eventually gets Clark Schmidt chased from the game. For me, what is helping this team right now? We have 2 unlikely players rising to the occasion. Not unlikely, I'm sorry. 1 unlikely player in Alex Verdugo rising to the occasion in Game 1 and essentially saving them there. We have Giancarlo Stanton coming back to playoff G, which is what we were kind of expecting to happen at some point, but we still needed to see it. And 3, Aaron Boone. I can't believe I'm fucking saying it, but Aaron Boone's management of this pitching staff has saved this series. The problems with Aaron Judge. Look, he had 2 balls on the screws last night. Bobby Witt snags one. The other one is 2 feet away from being a home run.
114 miles an hour on the Bobby Witt liner. And so, I mean, that's a reason why you think this night's not going to go your way, because you want to make a statement in the first. And that statement is, we forgot to work the count. Gleyber Torres grounded out on 1 pitch. Juan Soto hit what I thought was a home run into dead center, and it got to the wall. Judge hit a 14-mile-an-hour liner. It goes to Witt. Not even on a spectacular leap, just a moderate leap. And Seth Lugo had 7 pitches. You go down 1, 2, 3. You answer 0 questions, even though that's the best hit Judge ball of the series. It finds a glove. People are still aggrieved for good reason. I thought Juan Soto hit the sac fly later in the game harder than the one he did in the first that went to the wall. I didn't understand Vinny Pasquantino got a hit. It fooled Bob Costas. But I think all of us saw that liner and went, that's the line drive into center field. And then it just stopped flying towards the outfield and ended up.
Is the government controlling the weather in Kansas City?
We said we weren't going to talk about it. We're never going to do that on the other.
Tucker, come on in.
Yeah,
we got Tucker Carlson. We're going to actually. Can we let him in the room?
He watched. Tucker took some time out of his busy schedule to watch all 3.5 hours of Yankees Royals last night. I think Jazz Chisholm is a psyop. Oh, okay. Notable.
The Yankees, however. They're making this a little bit harder than they should, and I know that comes from a place of privilege because this team is very good and talented, but we talked about game 1. 8 batters come to the plate in, what was it, the 4th inning? 5th inning? They score 2 runs. Can't happen. Last night, 9 walks, 3 runs. None of those runs were a result. Juan Soto's walk was the only one that cashed in. Otherwise, it was Giancarlo Stanton's solo homer, and I don't even remember what the other run was. But the fact that they are leaving this many runners on base, they're not getting these hits with runners in scoring position, they are putting so much pressure on the opposing pitching staff, and it's all for nothing. They are Seth Lugo only going 5 innings last night. Pretty big accomplishment, especially for what he did to the Yankees in the Bronx towards the end of the regular season. Mm-hmm. We saw that replaying in our head over and over again, especially because, again, the Yankees didn't really show up offensively in games 1 and 2. And look, this is 1 bounce away from this going the Royals' way, and then we're having a different conversation. But I would like for there to just be an emphatic response or 2 at some point. Giancarlo Stanton's 8th inning homer is certainly a start, but when you get this much traffic on the bases, you have to chase the starter earlier. Game 2, Cole Reagan's, lasted 4 innings, 4 1/3 innings or whatever it was. Shouldn't have been that long. And I know that sounds crazy, but he threw almost 90 pitches, and the Yankees their postseason plan was going the way it should. They work at bats, they escalate the opposing pitcher's count, and they put traffic on the bases. And now, after that, is time to get hits, and I think that's where this team is falling short. You see a lot of guys still looking for walks. They're dancing around the strike zone too much. They're not being aggressive and early in the count. I'll give one shout out here. Anthony Volpe, night and day with how he performed in the Bronx versus last night. Going after pitches last night, he had that great hit up the middle. Just got to be less passive, especially as the game goes on and the pitcher is desperate to throw strikes. You got to hop on one. And the fact that you get 9 walks and 4 hits is abysmal. First of all, we can all agree that that's terrible, but you add an additional 9 base runners via the free pass and you score 3 runs. And it's just not, it's not what you need to be doing to win baseball games. And there's better pitching staffs in this playoffs. Tigers pitching staff is better than the Royals. Guardians pitching staff is better than the Royals. Padres pitching staff is better than the Royals. Mets pitching staff, probably better than the Royals. I think it's close.
Yeah, I'm confused by
the Mets eternally, but yeah. Either way, a lot of the other teams remaining in your path, assuming you advance, have better pitching staff. So they need to find a groove now, whether it's they take the series tonight or they force a game 5. I said after they lost game 2, they were not winning this series. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. At the very least, it's giving me 2022 vibes. Going to go to the brink. Going to make it a lot more difficult than it needs to be. Maybe going to be a little bit run down for the CS, but It is what it is. Yankees win. Got to feel good about it. Tonight, couldn't have a better situation. You got Gerrit Cole. So he's got to provide length because this bullpen is taxed right now. Absolutely taxed, but yep, good job for coming through when you needed to. Just need a little bit more of that because every game can't be like this. It's not sustainable.
No, and I would say winning tonight is of paramount importance. But at the very least, you're somehow not on the brink already. Like, I think I assumed if the Yankees were going to win this series after game 2, that they would lose to Seth Lugo, because that's what they do, and that's what they just did in September. And then they'd have to claw back in 4 behind Cole, and they'd have to win a wonky game at home in game 5. Now you've bought yourself an advantage. You can just bring the Cy Young to the mound and win the series. And he can go 7, and you can finally score against Michael Wacha. And you can have an easy night. But you haven't had an easy night through 3 games. So that feels like possible, not probable at this point, that it would be simple. The whole bullpen from yesterday can be used again. I think I overreacted in the moment and was like, yeah, but Holmes, Kahnle, Weaver, and then what are you going to do the next day? We're going to Ian Hamilton and Luis Gil in the 8th and 9th if we need them. Turns out 20 pitches for Weaver, 16 for Holmes. That's 20 for Weaver to get 5 outs, too. And Kahnle threw only 12, and he looked better than he had in previous games. So I think it's the playoffs. Those guys could go again. There would theoretically be another off day between 4 and 5. So you can find a way to get this to the finish line, but you could also just make it easier on yourselves by getting a Cy Young performance from your Cy Young and finally cashing in these runners. Not even all of them.
Just some of them. Adam's taking a break, folks.
I got sent to hell for some reason. You just have to have a 2009 World Series Game 6 plan, right? You don't have to cash in every runner, but you have to score early. You have to tack on a few innings later. If you load the bases, you got to tack on a few more. And then suddenly that game is 6-0. And you're like, this kind of isn't really in doubt anymore. Eventually it gets a little bit closer than that. You have a bullpen, but you just need to keep putting up 2 at a time. 1 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th. Oh, it's 6-1. Well, that's interesting. That's cool. A little easier than I thought. You just need one of those. You don't need to blow the doors off. You don't need to put up a 7 spot in the first. You just need to consistently keep pressure on, and real pressure, run scoring pressure.
I just want one win where it's like, this is a fucking championship team. Yeah, I'm not getting those. Haven't gotten those actually, in fact, in quite a while. Again, this team played 500 ball from June until the end of the season. They coasted on their really good first 2 months of the year, and the introduction to the playoffs has been more of the same worries that we've had all year. So just one time say, hey, we're fucking here, and you better believe it's coming back the next night if there is one. Or another team watching, hey, those guys, holy shit, just put up a 10 spot pretty effortlessly. Let's huddle together and figure out what our pitching plan is going to be against the New York Yankees.
Yeah, and I'm going to ground this too, because I think if you were to ask people right now, like, what team is doing that, they'd say the Mets. But here's what the Mets have done so far this postseason. They put an FU performance up on the Brewers in game 1. Then they lost the heartbreaker to the Brewers in game 2. Game 3, clutch late home run that Mets fans will never forget. But that's a game they're losing, and they flip it at the end. Then in Philly, again, losing in the 8th, flip it in the end, get walked off, come home, have an FU game, and then have a spectacular Lindor performance. But the Mets feel inevitable right now. You're like, they're going to run over the opposition eventually, whether it's in the 1st or the 8th. But they haven't really put up those FU games either. And if you look at the Yankees, they won a tight game in the opener of this series, had a devastating loss in the second game of this series. Now, not because they blew it late, but just because the offense didn't show up. That's why the vibe is different. But game 3 here, Giancarlo Stanton plays the Pete Alonso role. He homers in the 8th inning of a tie game on the road in front of a hostile environment, doesn't flip the lead, but changes the narrative entirely. So it's not like the Mets run has been replete with these games where it's just 2-0, 4-0, 7-0, 8-0, 9-0. We're all cheering. The Mets are winning these thrillers, these late emotion churning thrillers. And that's, if you would allow yourselves to love this Yankees team a little bit, that's what Giancarlo Stanton did last night. I don't blame any fans for being skeptical at all. And talk to me, lie detector me during yesterday's game. I didn't think they were winning until they won.
Nope. Same.
I certainly was not like overly enthusiastic when the Stanton homer, like when they've got 6 outs to get after the Stanton homer. I'm not like, pumping my fist like, it's over. Nice job. All comers. You're dead. But they do win a dramatic game. That's what they won. And the bullpen held it together late. And they got Yuli Gurriel with runners on the corners, which literally never happens. And if you make me talk about Yuli Gurriel, this is a plea to the Kansas City Royals. I'd love if you could get out of this series, because entering the series, I was like, you know what? Of all the opponents we've had, it's not that this one doesn't scare me, but it's that I don't have a lot of hatred in my heart for the Kansas City Royals. We'll get to the end of this series, and someone will have won it. And if it's not us, then I'll congratulate the opposition. And then I realized that 40-year-old Yuli Gurriel with a 650 OPS this season in 54 at-bats is all the way back to being the version of Yuli Gurriel that tormented us with the Astros in 17, 19, 22. How is that possible? How did the Royals manage to sneak him onto their active roster like 2 days before the cutoff? Why wouldn't the Braves call him up at any point? He's turning on high fastballs and tomahawking them off the left field wall. He is himself. He is 40. He's 40 years old, and his regular season numbers were terrible, and yet nothing has changed. So
Bob Costas doesn't know why the Yankees fans are booing him, though.
Yeah, I apologize to anyone who I was like, well, the Royals are fine. You know, we'll all have a kumbaya moment if the Yankees happen to go down in the series. No, we won't, because the main antagonist will be a fucking 40-year-old racist cheater from the Houston Astros. And no, I didn't forget the anti-Asian racism from the 2017 World Series. I know that I'm supposed to have forgotten it, but I actually didn't. So, yeah, if we could get Yuli Gurriel out of here, that would be fantastic. For some reason we can't. I said this yesterday, and I mean this in complimentary. This is not anti-Seth Lugo at all. Very good pitcher.
Yeah.
Very good Major League Baseball pitcher, all-star pitcher this year. If Seth Lugo represents the benchmark of ace that these Yankees just can't beat, and you could chalk it up to there was an ace on the other side, like, and what do you want us to do, man? Like, how are we supposed to win game 3? It's Seth Lugo. Then this core's championship aspirations are done. They've imploded. They've receded. Seth Lugo is a very good pitcher, but he's not an excuse-making pitcher. He's not a, what do you want us to do? Throw your hands in the air and go, we ran into Seth Lugo. I mean, what are we supposed to do? You're not allowed to do.
Not allowed to do it.
It's familiar because it's like a lot of this, and especially game 2 and the offensive downturn, reminded me of 2006 facing the Tigers and facing Kenny Rogers. And it became the same thing. It was like, well, what do you want us to do? Kenny Rogers is on fire. Right? How are we supposed to compete? That was the signal that core was dead. A-Rod's batting 8th. Like, you got to revamp that roster. 2007, you got kids. No, they don't go far, but you're starting to turn things over to Jabba and Hughes and Melky, etc. 08, you don't make the playoffs. 09, you reload. Like, 06, DS against the Tigers was the indicator that, like, these guys just don't have it anymore, and that's okay, but they're a little too old, and they won game 1 at home in that series too, and then Curtis Granderson ran all over them, and Carlos Guillen punished them, and Maglio beat them, and they could not hit Kenny Rogers. And it's the same situation for me. Seth Lugo, very good pitcher, but if you're running into Seth Lugo in a playoff series and throwing up your hands going, hey, they just had the better guy, then that means you are finished as currently constructed. You need to figure it out. So kudos to them for working Cole Reagans and working Seth Lugo. Lugo and Clark Schmidt pretty much pitched to a draw. And if some defensive things had gone the Yankees' way in that 5th inning, then Schmidt would have gotten out of that inning with, no runs, 5 shutout frames. They probably would have pulled him anyway, but you'd be real happy with that. And Reagans, Carlos Rodon couldn't finish anybody in that 4th inning especially. He was getting 2 strikes on a lot of batters, could have easily escaped that inning down 2-1, and then we're not having the same conversation, and then we're playing a tightrope game the entire rest of the way. But instead, he couldn't finish anybody. He lost his stuff, down tick, and Reagans, that's barely even a start. 4 innings. I mean, you're right. It should have been 2/3, but it was 4. I mean, the Yankees offense has done their job putting traffic on the bases, but they have not even come close to doing the more important aspect of their job.
Again, incomplete. Grade is incomplete. It's a C+ for this performance so far. The pitching staff, really, it's, again, bullpen and Aaron Boone. Jump to that real quick. I mean, you have Clay Holmes in the spot that we all kind of wanted him in a couple of months ago when the Yankees refused to make this decision. You have Tommy Kahnle back to where we believed he could return to after his Tommy John surgery and the injuries that affected him afterward. And you got Luke Weaver in this role, again, didn't exactly have to be closer, but needed to be the guy who can go 4, 5, 6 outs in the highest leverage moments. And right now he's kind of reserved as the closer. I think that's pretty much set in stone right now. The Yankees still aren't going to really put a label on it because I do confidently believe, like, if this goes to a game 5 and the Royals have runners on first and second with 1 out and the lineup is getting turned over, Luke Weaver's coming in the 7th inning. It's just probably what's going to happen. And then they'll figure out the pitching scenario after that. But the manner in which Aaron Boone has called upon these guys in these spots, and the reason I'm giving credit for it is not because it was successful. It's because it was the actual vision of this bullpen for a while that was not executed for, again, whatever reason. We still don't know. We have no idea why they weren't more flexible with the bullpen. They weren't more flexible with the closer role. Maybe we're dumb and it was a long-term play, so the teams in the postseason wouldn't know who they would be facing at certain scenarios. Maybe the Yankees are sitting there and be like, oh, teams are going to game plan for Clay Holmes to close games. Joke's on them, because he will be coming in the 5th inning of random games. You never know. But Aaron Boone pulling Gerrit Cole when he did in game 1, pulling Carlos Rodon when he did in game 2. And we did have a little bit of a question about burning the bullpen in game 2 with how he called upon those guys. Retrospectively, I'm going to give him credit for that because he was trusting his offense. He was trusting his team. He said, you know what, guys? It's a 4-1 deficit. Let's get some fucking runs. Like, we can score runs over the course of the next 3-4 innings. We're capable of doing it. His offense let him down. In this game, he's pulling no punches. Game's tied at 2-2. I am not giving the Royals a lane for 1 second. And he goes Holmes, Kahnle, and Weaver, all for longer than 1 inning. The split inning duty kings. For years, we've complained about this. Mentioned it last episode. It was like you brought in Aroldis Chapman for split inning duty or Zach Britton for split inning duty, and it was asking them to pitch a complete game shutout. But these guys are very versatile. They have all risen to the occasion. The vibe check is there, in my opinion. Aaron Boone, you passed my vibe check, finally. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, the guy, you haven't asked yourself, outside of Luke Weaver coming in game 2 towards the end, you have not asked yourself a question about what Aaron Boone is doing. You're saying, oh, it's time for this guy to get out, or, oh, yeah, love Tommy Kahnle here. It's a great spot for him. Mm-hmm. So you got to give credit to Aaron Boone, who's caught a lot of flack for whether or not he can motivate this squad or his other perhaps short-sighted pitching decisions. Pressing all the right buttons right now. It's gotten the Yankees 2 wins and should have got them a 3rd if the offense decided to respond.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with a single thing he did except for Luke Weaver to Bobby Witt Jr. in game 2 for 5 pitches.
Yep.
I thought you have to manage aggressively. If you don't manage a 4-1 playoff game at home aggressively, then you're a fool. You can't wave the white flag. We got to see what Tim Maza looks like in the 9th. It is what it is. He was pretty good. But when it came time for Witt Jr. with 2 outs in that inning, you can't give him an extra look at Weaver. You have to hope that Tim Maza can get the 3rd out. There's only 1 guy on base. And if he doesn't, so be it. It's not the worst thing in the world already. Your chances of coming back are markedly lower in the 9th than they were in the 5th. But Witt Jr. getting that extra look, who knows how much it helped yesterday? I sure don't. But you're calling Weaver in for a 5-out save. First batter he faces is Witt Jr. He singles hard through the hole. That's his first hit of the entire series. Yeah. And his 3rd look at Luke Weaver. The first AB against Weaver, he put up a fight and struck out looking at a pitch right at the bottom of the zone that he disagreed with. It looked like a strike from home. I think it was a strike, but Witt got, I don't remember if it was 9 or 10 pitches, but he fouled off a lot of pitches in the 9th inning of game 1. Game 2, Weaver attacked him and retired him on 5, got a pop out foul territory. But That's like 15 pitches across 2 ABs, and the last 5 were completely unnecessary. And it led to him timing them up well and making the 8th inning unnecessarily stressful yesterday. Then Volpe makes the incredible catch. I also somehow, my cable is behind Twitter. So it only spoils things at inopportune moments. Luckily, it's mostly helpful. Although yesterday I did see a tweet that says Royals tied it up with like a pitch and some wandering around the mound to go before Michael Massey actually lined that triple. So that was cool. But right after the Witt single, I go to Twitter to write an angry tweet about Weaver getting extra exposure to Witt. And the tweet at the top of the feed is, what an incredible play by Anthony Volpe. And I was like, all right, we're in for some cool stuff. I guess I'll tweet this and then watch a nice play. 2 outs is always better than 1 out. It's one of my favorite mantras, though 3 outs is obviously superior to both of those previous outcomes. Yeah, I was pumped more often than not, although there was obviously first half of the game, and especially right after the Royals tied it, you felt the tide turning, slipping away. But that's why primetime players like Giancarlo Stanton make primetime plays. That's why they're there. I'll credit Boone. I will credit Boone for the decisions he's made in the bullpen this series, as well as the decision to move off Clay Holmes. We can all be prisoners of the moment. We can, at that point, I will say, at that point, the Yankees had like a half game or 1 game lead on the division. And so I think it was fair to say, thanks for making this move now on September 8th. But if we had just halved the number of Clay Holmes blown saves, we'd be 5 or 6 up. So what the fuck are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that removing Clay Holmes at that point was somehow going to be enough, that the Yankees were going to get hot enough and the Orioles were going to stay cold and they would be able to extend that lead without having to worry about previous games that they had squandered over the course of the year. That was surprising to me, that they had enough time left to extend that lead anyway. So prisoner of the moment, fine. I wish they had removed Clay Holmes, the closer, in August, and we could get on with our lives, and he would have had even more time to get comfortable in the new role, but he didn't, and apparently it wasn't enough time. He, as a graphic very helpfully reminded us yesterday, has never allowed a run in the postseason, which, hey, never say that on a broadcast again. Just don't say it.
Shut your fucking mouth.
Don't say it. Shut your mouth. But good to know. So postseason is already nothing new for Clay Holmes. He is used to the pressure of the moment for whatever reason. And Clay Holmes in the middle innings, it's not like it took right away. He had 2 blown saves in September after losing the closer's role, which is hard to do. Just continue to rack up those blown saves. But eventually they figured out a rhythm. He's not perfect. He showed up and looked a little bit scattered in game 1. And again, that his glove got knocked off and there was traffic on the bases in his first inning. He was this close to immediately giving up some runs. Looked kind of like that, Willie Abreu inning in Boston when he comes in to put out the fire and just immediately gets rocked for more runs. But gets out of it, and then great performance in game 2. Best performance of the series in game 3 last night. And at the time, I was guilty of saying that feels like great relief that gets lost in a game where they get walked off 3-2 in 10 innings. But Giancarlo Stanton made sure that we got to celebrate Holmes and Boone and Boone's moves at the end of that one because if Stanton homers, I don't know who's homering. Like if he doesn't homer, I don't know who is making the noise.
They
lose
in extras. They lose in the bottom of the 10th.
And there were calls yesterday for Giancarlo Stanton to be benched from that lineup. Really? And I just want everybody making those decisions.
Where were those?
In the complaining Yankee fan community. I don't want to call out anybody specifically, but I saw people start to say the postseason G
like real
narrative.
People?
Yeah, real people with followings. Yeah, not Simon Eddie Source who hates us, but other people with real followings saying, always the postseason G thing is a myth. He's actually like 5 for his last whatever. But then, hey, biggest game of the year. Hits just a powerhouse double to the gap to get the scoring started. Juan Soto scores from first, also underrated. Hits a 105+ mile an hour liner at the middle for a single, and then goes and scoops a breaking ball. I was shocked to see a lefty like Chris Bubich in there for that lane with Stanton as the number 2 guy in that inning. And I will also say, you want to credit Boone. Matt Quatraro is a manager of the year favorite. And I didn't understand the Angel Zerpa move in the first game, and I didn't understand Bubic at all. I thought he pulled Waka too early in the first game, and I thought Bubic for the 8th was bizarre yesterday. Then you check the stats and see this year Stanton had an 800 OPS against righties and a 705 against lefties, and you're like, okay, but are you doing historical data? Because he hit lefties so well the past couple of years that we were starting to consider whether he needed to only start against lefties moving forward. Like, is he just going to be a lefty masher, half DH to share the role with Jason Dominguez or whatnot? So it felt like a little 2024 coded decision for Matt Quatraro, and then luckily Stanton made him pay. And said after the game, basically, John Boy put out a really interesting clip today of Judge and Stanton both being asked what makes Stanton special in October, and Judge saying, nothing really. He's the same guy he is all year long, and we love him. And Stanton specifically saying the pressure of the moment. Like, I rise to pressure. So it sort of says a lot about Judge and Stanton, that Judge is like, nothing's different. He's the same old guy. He's just G. And G is like, actually, something's different. I like pressure.
Yeah.
So I appreciate seeing him continue to rise to the occasion. It's not going to be every day. There are going to be ugly moments. There always are. But praise to Giancarlo Stanton yesterday, who always seems to show up in the moments where nobody else is. And Juan Soto has been a presence. He has impacted the series. Gleyber Torres has been a presence. He has impacted this series. Should have had an RBI double yesterday, but the replay system straight up does not work. Didn't work in game 1 for us. Didn't work in game 3 against us. The Yankees don't challenge a Volpe infield single because they're like, we don't think the replay is going to overturn that. And they're probably right. And then like 2 batters later, they challenge a Torres play because they're like, well, this one's obvious. And the replay is still like, no, we can't overturn that either. So we see we see what they see. They see what we see. They aren't able to make the determination that we see based on restrictions that they have. Cool system. Gleyber Torres got a big hit taken away. Volpe has been mostly nails on defense. The Adam Frazier playing against the shift, I think he could have made the throw was a little wild, and obviously made a horrific play in game 1. So I guess not great on defense, but offensively is in the upper echelon.
Yeah,
above average offensive performers: Stanton, Volpe, Soto, and Gleyber, and Gleyber's and Soto's contributions have been mostly walks. So it's been a very odd series. But hey, I got to credit all 4 of those guys, and I got to credit Stanton as the one who has answered the bell the hardest, because he's actually producing run scoring and game changing type of outcomes versus baton passing, which is what a lot of the other guys are doing.
Yeah, Stanton's MO is never, especially in the postseason, going on an absolute tear like he did it in 2020 for those couple of games. But it's also not realistic to do that. If you have a guy who's an impact bat who can win you a game in a DS, 2 games in the CS, doesn't really matter what he does in the losing efforts. Like, he's directly impacting wins. And again, at this point, you should accept Giancarlo Stanton for who he is. He is a DH. He is an immobile DH, even though he stole a base last night. Don't you forget it. He's overpaid based on what he can contribute at this point, but he's still a fearsome bat. He's still somebody who steps up in high pressure moments when a lot of this team does not. And he's someone who can change the game with one swing of a bat. So there's value in that. You can complain about him striking out all you want. Again, part of his profile, been part of his profile for 10 years now. So you're just wasting your time. In terms of the rest of the offense, before we get into game 4, I need either Austin Wells out of the cleanup spot, or I need something to happen with Jazz Chisholm and Austin Wells. Austin Wells' RBI single in game 1 was great. That's all he has done. Jazz Chisholm's meaningless home run in game 2 was, I guess, cool. That is all he has done. They are combined 4 for 24.
Yeah, Jazz Chisholm yesterday after the game saying they don't boo bums, and I keep almost tweeting but not quote tweeting with until now.
Yeah.
So prove me wrong. Like, I love that he's embracing the boos, but I don't like that he did jack shit yesterday.
Yeah.
So get a hit today or 2.
Just something. I mean, like, again, the problem with this lineup is, yes, Aaron Judge not performing. We could harp on that all day. The reality is that that's what's happening right now. The supporting cast members cannot also be doing this. This is where, like, you draw the line. Judge exists as an MVP caliber player. He's going to be that. He's not going to be able to carry the weight for 162 games plus another month of a postseason run. Other people need to step up. Giancarlo Stanton is inherently one of those guys. He's done it throughout his career. Juan Soto is another one of those guys. You would assume Gleyber Torres is one of those guys. He's been around for a while. He's been to a lot of postseasons. But, I mean, Austin Wells is a rookie. I don't really expect much from him. I like him as a long-term Yankee, but he cannot be – this is where I'll get on Aaron Boone a little bit. He can't be the full-time cleanup hitter, especially in the playoffs. He had an awful September, and he has shown zero sign of turning it around. That cannot be your cleanup hitter. Now it's time to move stuff around. I don't know who gets moved up. I mean, Oswaldo Cabrera, for fuck's sake, walked 3 times last night. Why don't we move him up? Put Jazz and Austin Wells at the bottom of the lineup. That's almost like more threatening.
John Birdie was awesome in his one game at first base. Oswaldo walked 3 times yesterday and put up some of the best ABs. Like, the first base platoon random guy situation is going pretty well. Maybe we can emphasize those guys a little bit.
I agree. I think, and look, if Volpe is not going to beg looking for walks like he was in game 1 that we got super frustrated with, and he's going to fight with good at-bats and put bat on ball like he did last night, 1 for 2 with a run scored and 2 walks, move him up. I mean, look, I have my problems with Anthony Volpe in the leadoff spot, but no one's saying you can't bat him 5th. This is where Aaron Boone's playing the hot hand with the bullpen. Doing a great job with it. Time to play the hot hand with the lineup. Austin Wells over the last month is a number 9 hitter. I love him. Want him on this team for as long as he could possibly be here, but not baked into the cleanup spot for the remainder of the postseason. So that's got to change. That's it. I mean, in terms of what we're looking at for game 4, it's Gerrit Cole. Gerrit Cole's got to execute. Gerrit Cole's got to give at least 6 innings. Again, this bullpen is taxed. Even if Gerrit Cole does go 6 or 7 innings, I'm wondering what the bullpen situation is after that. My immediate thought is bring in Luis Gil and see what happens. What if he finishes the game? You save the bullpen.
I think if you have it depends on the score, but I think they've had so few multi-run leads to work with in this series anyway. Like 2-0 yesterday was crazy. It was like, oh my God, 2. Yeah. That was the first multi-run lead of the entire series, right? Unless I'm forgetting a back and forth in game 1, but that kept going, 5-4, 6-5. Like they didn't. Gleyber hit a 2-run home run and they were down 1-0. Yeah, the first multi-run lead of the series was yesterday in the 5th, and then it went away immediately. So even if that's a 3-0 lead or 4-1 when Cole exits the game, I would bring Gil in for the 7th, knowing that you can use any of these high-pressure folks. Now, it's an easy choice if they're up 7-0 or 8-0. Or let's say they're down.
Let's say
they're down a couple when Cole exits. I would have no issue going to Gil over Hamilton type. But I think you can use Kahnle and Holmes and especially Weaver. But I wouldn't want to use any of these guys unless I absolutely have to. And I certainly don't want to use Weaver for over 3 outs. It's not like you're in danger of overusing him and there are 7 more games in this series and you're going to give the Royals look after look after look. And it also matters who's coming up and when. But yeah, I would say if the game is not a nail biter, either leading by 3, trailing by 3, or leading by a large chunk, I'd like to see Luis Gil factor into this series somewhat. I thought the Yankees probably expected to piggyback Clark Schmidt with him yesterday or piggyback Rodon with him in game 1 and game 2, and neither of those things happened. And there, I didn't want Gil brought into a 2-2 game in the 6th yesterday, so I didn't want him coming in for Clark Schmidt in that scenario. But I felt like that was their goal, and maybe we were misaligned on their goal. It's incredibly obvious why they didn't carry Marcus Stroman now, because they have a bullpen trust tree, and they're not going to these bulk guys. It's like the bench. Duke Ellis is here. When are you going to use him? Jason Dominguez can't get an at-bat. I mean, I get it. You're going to pinch hit Dominguez for Stanton? No. Theoretically, though, you could pinch run Ellis for Stanton at some point, get him off his feet, and then have Dominguez in there. We talked about this on the last show, but Stanton's been their best offensive player, and even in the 8th inning yesterday, you didn't want to, really entertain losing him because it's a 1-run game. You have no idea when you're going to need Giancarlo Stanton moving forward. You don't want to weaken the 5-hole. So good job by the Yankees' elite bullpen stalwarts getting us to this point. But Ian Hamilton surrendered a run-scoring single on like the first pitch he threw and then looked good, then bounced back. He's probably in a realistic world where we're not taking chances, is probably my first guy out of the bullpen today. But I would like to be in a scenario with a 4-run or larger lead where we can see what Luis Gil does in the bullpen, where it's not absolute nightmare if there are 2 on and 1 out. All of a sudden, we have to go to an experienced reliever.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to get into a game. He had a really good season.
He's going to start a game if they make it to the ALCS. He's going to start game 4. So we have to see him.
That is true. Yeah. Because it'll be – no. Will he?
And the off days are different. It's like game, off day, game. Like you can't rest and go Cole 1-4-7 quite so easily. Maybe you can, maybe you want to, but it doesn't come quite as naturally. So they could 09 World Series it the whole way. They could Cole, Burnett, CC, Burnett, Pettit with Cole, Rodon, and Schmidt but Schmidt's like a 4-5 inning guy at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you have quite the horses in the rotation right now, especially without Nestor Cortez. I think it was Joel Sherman who posited who would you rather have in game 2, Nestor or Rodon, and sadly the answer is I think Nestor at this point. It's not even an anti-Rodon.
Game 2 at home, yeah.
Yeah, it's not even an anti-Rodon sentiment. I just trust him to provide sort of calm, cool, collected length a little bit more at this point. Yeah. Rodon had his best starts of the year, arguably against the Royals, and then still showed up with too much fire and woke up the opposing dugout, wagged his tongue, and then Salvi wagged his tongue, and then Michael Garcia got 4 hits and told us not to celebrate too early, which was ironic considering that's kind of celebrating too early, and then they lost game 3. But either way, I don't think you quite have the trustworthy starting pitching to be like, we got our 3 guys, that's the rotation all the way to the end, and if you don't like it, there's the door, because that's what we're doing. I think you're going to have to mix Gil in at some point, whether it's him and Schmidt start 3 in another hypothetical round, or they go 3-4 or what have you, or they go like Cole, Rodon, Schmidt, Cole, Gil, Rodon, Schmidt, or something like that. I don't know. I'm just, it's not my job to make the rules, just my job to talk about it. But either way, first 3 games of the series, haven't heard a peep from him, haven't seen him. It's felt like Ben Rice wearing a turtleneck in the dugout. Luis Gil, where are you? You hanging out in the bullpen. I still miss Cody Poteet, but if I can't have him to eat innings, then I'd like to see Gil do it. The toughest thing about it is that playoff games are uniformly tight.
Yeah.
So, I'd love a Yankees blowout win, so I could shove Luis Gil in there. Gil in game 2 would have been interesting, but not before you know what Schmidt's going to give you. It's just all difficult. Today would be the day if Cole and the offense can get them to a place where you've got some security. But, he better be throwing some aggressive side sessions. They gave some credit to Schmidt's side sessions yesterday in the Yes postgame, being like, if I was going to tell you he only walked 1, they did some great work with him between the end of the season layoff and Wednesday. And I guess they did, and I'll tip my cap to the Yankees team. Hopefully that same work is being done on Luis Gil, who is kind of just in a refrigerator right now.
Yeah, he hasn't pitched since September 28th, which is now 12 days ago.
In the rain, and he sucked.
Yeah. Was I opposed to Clark Schmidt starting yesterday? No. Did I see the perils with it? Yes. He doesn't give length, and that's just exactly what happened. You needed a start after Gerrit Cole and Carlos Rodon gave you a combined 8 2/3 innings, and 4 2/3 just isn't going to cut it. And call it wishful thinking to get a quality start out of one of your pitchers during the playoffs, but math says you should get 1 with this pitching staff, and the Yankees got 0. So my thought process was, why would you name a game 3 starter before you know what's even going to happen in game 2? That's why I wrote about, why are you going with Clark Schmidt, who historically does not provide length? Meanwhile, Luis Gil had a 7-start stretch this year where he went 6 or more innings. So history tells you that Clark Schmidt has a lot of experience coming out of the bullpen, whether you support him in that role or not. That's where a lot of his experience is. And Luis Gil has none of that experience and has given more length than Clark Schmidt in his rookie season. So before you knew what was happening with Carlos Rodon, it was crazy to name a Game 3 starter. Especially if there was no timestamp on it. You wait and you see, if Carlos Rodon fucks up tonight, then maybe I go Luis Gil for Game 3. If not, Carlos Rodon goes 7. I have a well-rested bullpen. Let's go Clark Schmidt, see what he can do. Then we can use the bullpen. So things could have turned really badly in that inning, and we could be having a much different conversation right now. Fact of the matter is Luis Gil's a weapon. He has value. He needs to be utilized. Don't know how that's going to be, but it needs to happen tonight in some capacity. I know in theory, I guess these guys aren't off the table, Kahnle, Holmes, and Weaver, but you've now used them for 3 games of this series. This postseason goes for another 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Can't use them every game.
Yeah.
Just can't. They will be.
You want to win the ALDS? Maybe you can win the ALDS using these 3 relievers in every single baseball game.
Yeah.
You want to win the World Series? No, you cannot do that.
Correct. So, this is where you need the offense to come through. It's got to be 6-1, 6-2 game in the 7th, and Luis Gil comes on, and if he gets out of that inning clean, you bring him out for the 8th and possibly the 9th. If he struggles in that inning, he gets some work in. You reevaluate your options for the 8th and 9th, and you go from there. But this guy can't be sitting on the side. Or look, the side sessions are great, especially if they're going hard, but there is nothing that can take place of the experience of actually stepping on the mound in a playoff game. And a rookie pitcher who we have high hopes for needs that experience now for the present and for the future of this organization. So they got to get him in.
And Clark Schmidt has done that before. He's gotten walked off by the Guardians in a playoff game. Like, he's got playoff experience, just not as a starter. And now we can add that to his bucket. Luis Gil's got nothing. And I'd like to see what he could potentially bring to the table. But I'd like to see the Yankees leading 8-1 when we do see that. That would be fantastic. Do we want to talk about the Mets? I mean,
sure.
We're moving, inching closer to the possibility. I mean, look, the team holding up the end of the Subway Series bargain right now is the Mets, who are inevitable, who are a rock running down a hill. Whether they're doing it via, like we said, in-your-face FU games, or they're just sort of getting the clutchest home run you've ever seen every 36 hours set to a timer. They're managing to plow through, and they plowed through the layoff Phillies, who got a taste of their own medicine. They beat the Braves 2 years in a row after the Braves layoffs, and then the Phillies had some time to rest and reflect on the season, and the Mets used that time to take out their intestines and tie them in holes and put them back in their body surgically via unlicensed surgery in a foreign country. The Mets dominated the Phillies in this series, and look, I think Juan Soto, free agency is not a thing that I really want to be thinking about in early October, certainly, especially with the Yankees still alive in the postseason and Soto being a major part of that. But I think a lot of people, you got some Yankee fans who are rooting for the Mets every step of the way. And I'm certainly not anti-Mets. They're not like crushing my soul every time they deliver a big hit. But I do think some Yankee fans, Juan Soto has made it very clear that winning the World Series is high on his priority list. And if you laughed off the Mets as a legitimate destination in April, May, and rightfully so, because Met fans' entire argument was just Steve Cohen has money. Yeah, I know, but where's the culture? Where's the bravado? Where's the potential legacy creation? Where's the roster around him? Those questions are being pretty emphatically answered. This was not supposed to be a one-year plan for David Stearns, but somehow it was. You want to talk about culture and bravado? The Mets have those in spades. So every game the Yankees win increases their chances of bringing Juan Soto back for next year. This is a different conversation now than it was after Game 2 of the DS, when the Yankees were mopey and the Mets were on the verge of doing something historic, and they did move forward last night. But every Mets win also proves that there could be a cathartic end of the rainbow waiting in Queens. Money is just a part of it. Money they have. They've got a lot of that. So do we. But if the Mets have a 5-year plan that consists of endless joy, that could also theoretically affect the Juan Soto chase. Reports already coming out today that Philly, with Kevin Long, intends making a serious run on Soto, as well as big changes to the not tied down parts of the roster. They'll factor in the Blue Jays. Want you to some weird column that was like a source close to Soto said the Blue Jays have a Godfather offer prepared. I'll believe it when I see it. The Blue Jays love finishing third. Maybe they do have an offer, but that doesn't mean Soto's interested. I would put the Phillies in the bucket, but right now it's still Yankees and Mets running against each other. And Subway Series could really be if the Yankees are able to survive and get through the American League field and the Tigers pitching chaos and the Guardians bullpen and the Royals scrappy attitude. If they're able to somehow be the last one standing at the end of the AL playoff field for the first time since 2009, they very well might be facing off against their direct competitor in a war for Juan Soto's services. So just setting that up, and every Yankee fan who's been mesmerized by the Mets and wants to talk about how, like, that's a team. The Yankees, they come up empty and they put guys on base and they're clogged and they don't excite me. But the Mets, that's a team. You're kind of doing the Juan Soto sales job when you do that. So just be careful when you're going to get enamored by that other team.
Yeah, I think it's a talking point because this is the realest that it's ever been. Yankees traded for Juan Soto immediately. Mets fans are like, well, enjoy him for a year because we're gonna sign him next year with Uncle Stevie's money. And it's like, no, you're not. You're bad. You've had to offload money. The stars you brought in have not worked out. You've taken steps backwards. And it was the case for the first 2.5 months of the season. You're like, this team's dead in the water. This team sucks. Best team in baseball since mid-June. So you got to give the Mets credit. And now you're looking at this postseason run. The way that they are playing, in theory, is the way that the Yankees should be playing. They should be not be in the wild card and fighting down to their last out, but they should be punching back when the opposition puts a run on the board. They should be jumping out to a quick lead when the opposing pitcher leaves the door open for them. And that's what the Mets have been doing. On top of that, they have the vibes. Whether you think the OMG stuff is dumb, whether you think the Grimace stuff is dumb, is the Hawk Tua girl going to be part of this pitch? I don't know. But it's possible.
I don't understand what she's doing with the Mets. She's like putting up little videos and I'm watching them on mute. And it's like her and her friends pointing at TV screens. And I'm like, is this the same video over and over again? Or does she have like 15 Mets victory related videos? It seems like she has a lot of them, but I don't really know what they're all about.
She's got a management team for sure. And she's
I think she's just one creative lady. I think she's doing it all pro bono.
It's too good. But look, the vibes are there. Like, the Mets are having fun. The Yankees don't ever really have fun. I think that's the biggest thing. And it depends what Juan Soto wants, right? He could view the Mets vibe stuff as childish and silly and dumb. And he could be all part of the Yankees business, buttoned up, corporate culture, which is a reason, one of the main reasons I actually dislike the Yankees is because there aren't any personalities. There's a lack of candor in the interviews. There, like, Luke Weaver is a godsend at this point. You see his post-game interviews and you're like, holy fuck, a real person with answers. Giancarlo Stanton, even, like, he's been through the ringer in New York, so I think his guard's let down a little bit and he answers a little bit more honestly. But for the most part, everybody's just giving cookie cutter bullshit answers. They're not, they're going through the dugout just giving high fives and smiling. Like, the Mets have these little gimmicky things where, I don't know, the players get excited over it and they use it as a bonding experience. Like, do you watch Carlos Mendoza's speech after they won the DS? Like, I would love to see Aaron Boone give a speech like that. It will literally never happen. Just won't happen. So it's two completely different vibes and cultures right now in New York. I don't know which one's better. I don't know which one's worse. Obviously, you look at the Yankees' track record. They are a more successful franchise than the Mets. The Mets, yes, made an NLCS run this year. The last time they made it beyond the wild card round was 2015. So, yeah, in totality, you could look at this. If the Yankees miss the ALCS this year, the Yankees will have only made one more CS appearance than the Mets since 2018. So, yes, we could actually talk about the playoff success. But for the most part, the Yankees have only missed the playoffs once since 2016. And they're in the conversation to be a World Series contender every single year. And they go through a far less turmoil than the Mets do, just from an overall roster performance, media standpoint. Oftentimes the Mets are like, it's just not a good situation with them. It's not. But guess what? All that matters is, what have you done for me lately? And the Mets are on a heater right now. And I know that some of this roster is going to change, but there are valued aspects here. Again, Juan Soto's played this very close to the vest. You don't know what he wants. You know that the only thing you know is that he wants to explore free agency. We don't know what perks of free agency he's going to want. Maybe he makes Steve Cohen fly him to Japan for sushi, then comes back and then goes somewhere else. I don't know. Possibility. But yeah, there are diverging paths right now with the Yankees and the Mets. Two completely different contending teams, two completely different energies, and it all depends on where one of them ends up this year. Because like the Mets are getting unlikely performances out of all these guys. Does Soto see through that, right? Is he like, is Sean Manaea a cornerstone piece of this team? Is Jose Quintana a cornerstone piece of this team?
Yeah. Are they going to prioritize me or Jesse Winker? Where's the money going?
But yeah, so it's like, look, the Mets are doing admirable things in terms of their core, in terms of the long-term future. I don't know if I see it. I really don't. And that, I think, comes down to what they do this next offseason. But David Stearns has done a great job. Steve Cohen has done a really good job with offloading those weighty assets that haven't provided much and turning that money into top prospects. I don't know what the future holds, but now it's a real conversation because an NLCS appearance is big boy stuff. And that could change Juan Soto's perspective on things. But again, we'll wait until the end, see who the last team standing is. I still think the Yankees are well positioned here. They just got to make these wins a little bit less excruciating. Win a game like the Mets, hit a grand slam in the fucking sixth and then just shut the door after that.
It would be great. It would be so great to just have one nice, calm, cool, collected win. You have the insurance policy of going home, but that's loser talk. Win tonight. Yeah. Win tonight. Take the one game ahead of you. It's nice to be up 2-1 versus being up, down 2-1, obviously, but it was nice to be up 1-0. And then you squandered that. You had a game in your pocket, and the home
lucky game in your pocket.
You had a lucky game in your pocket, and the home crowd was hyped for Carlos Rodon, and Carlos Rodon had the best first inning I have ever seen from a starting pitcher. And then 40 minutes later, that game was it.
It's true.
So don't play like there's a tomorrow. You got one if you need it, but play game to game, attack it. The Mets knew there was a game in reserve yesterday, but they knew it was in Philadelphia, and they knew that was a scary proposition. So Francisco Lindor went out and sort of effortlessly hit a granny. That's the thing. Soto's also been able to share the stage really nicely with Aaron Judge this year. I don't know if he'll be able to share the stage with Francisco Lindor.
We don't think?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like Lindor is, and maybe not, but there would be some weird, you're right. I don't know. But
I don't know. My whole thing with it is like, does he want to share the spotlight with Judge still, play second fiddle, and have all the pressure on him? Because the pressure is perennially going to exist on him and Judge.
That is true, but there's this thing of like Soto has already done it in the postseason before. He won a World Series with the Nats, and he hit, massive home runs during that streak. Now Lindor has done it in the postseason too. You got two postseason proven alpha dogs. Meanwhile, in New York, you've got Judge, MVP, center of attention, all year long, made Soto's life easier. Now he's making Soto's life a little bit harder. And it's supposed to be Soto, who's sort of the constant metronome, and Judge, who's the guy, hey, when he's locked in to a crazy degree. And you just wonder, I mean, Mets fans are so indebted to Francisco Lindor for this run already. I'm not saying they won't accept Juan Soto. I'm just saying you're coming into a house with some strange energy because we've never seen a run like this before. It's like it's kind of like when he joined the Padres with Tatis Jr. being this, like, we love this man. And also here's Juan Soto. Like it's tough. He's not the original, and coming in immediately on the heels of this Mets year would be sort of an odd vibe, but he certainly might choose it. You cannot discount the Mets, and every Mets win brings that closer to a reality. That's why the Yankees need to win some games. So one day at a time, Gerrit Cole, Michael Wacha, the lineup knows the job. You've already seen this guy. Gerrit Cole was going middle in game one. He's got less rest this time. It's normal rest. It's standard pitching behavior. Gerrit Cole, find your corners, harness your stuff. New York Yankees lineup, put traffic on the bases, move guys over. After bunts, hit singles instead of sac flies. We'll take the sac flies, but if you load the bases with one out, give me 2 or 3 runs. Just once. You don't have to do it every time, and then keep tacking on. Run around third, 1 out, lift a deep fly ball. Aaron Judge hit that 114-mile-an-hour liner that didn't hit grass, and then never had guys with wrist. And he was hitting these long fly balls. It would have been nice sac flies if Soto had a 3-1 pitch that he hit for that deep sac fly. If he walks, then Judge's ball is a sac fly. Then we keep the line moving. He's missing by inches, right? He had his best game of the series yesterday with a walk and a check swing that should never have been called, and that 114-mile-an-hour liner and 2 long fly balls. Close, but no cigar. So let's build on that game. Take your run-scoring opportunities where you get them. Put 2 across where you've been putting 1 across. And win a baseball game and get Luis Gil in a game that you ultimately win and move on. How about that? One day at a time. Don't take tomorrow for granted, even though it's assured. Just win today's game. I'm Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib. Thomas Carannante, where can the people find you?
I am at Tommy's_takes. You can find the both of us at the official Yanks Go Yard account at Yanks Go Yard FS. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel would be greatly appreciated. Head on over to yanksgoyard.com. We got all the content for you. Pre-game lineups, in-game stuff, post-game stuff, opinions. What are you feeling? What do you want to talk about? You let us know. We'll write about it. We'll have a good time. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Yanks tonight. What's it? 7, 8? It's 8 o'clock?
8:08.
8:08.
And you hope, you hope it's heartbreak for the Royals, not us on the 808s.
Yeah, look, I am going to remain reserved in my predictions. Do I think the Yankees can win? Absolutely. Am I fully confident? No. They still got to show me more. Tonight, it's lined up just as perfectly as they could have asked for. Gerrit Cole takes a little bit of pressure off the offense. If he can deal in the first few innings, let the guys settle in, just score some runs. I just want a couple more runs. I want 5 or 6. I'm not asking for 10. It's just 2, 3, 4 is just not enough. Get me 6. Yeah. Shut the door. We'll see you next week.
Maybe 6 will be the difference in Bob Costas being interested and invested in this game and despondent and just worried about Giancarlo Stanton's legs. Maybe 6 will get him hype and juiced. I don't know. Maybe 6 will knock George Brett off the screen. Is he coming again tonight?
Get off the screen, George.
Get off the screen, George. You know, those 70s and 80s Yankees games were quite a battle. Well, there's one happening right now. So
what about the 2024 game?
That's
George?
Awesome. I'll pop the documentary in. Just you sit right there. We'll shoot your interview after the game. But for now, I'm trying to watch these current teams. Well, that's a double play ball, I think you said at some point yesterday.
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry. Go Yankees. Win the games in front of you. One of those is tonight. Win tonight's game. Answer questions. Answer the bell. Follow Giancarlo Stanton's lead. Yeah, he's the leader. Follow his lead, folks.